Okay, Mishlei 21:2. Kol derech ish yashar be'enav v'tochen libos Hashem. Only one phrase here that's hard to translate, but how would you do the working translation here?
All the ways of man are straight in his eyes.
Okay.
And like the establishment.
So tochen is a hard one, right? So tochen, okay, so here are a couple options. This is the All Torah dictionary. Regulate, measure, estimate. Okay, that's as a verb. To be adjusted to the standard, to meet out, okay, to measure out. What other what would you, all right, I should have asked this before. What would you have said tochen means, or like remind you of word-wise? Oh, so it's interesting. I wouldn't have said that, but you're actually right in terms of the way people say that because it's spelled differently. Okay, tikkun is, yeah, right. Yeah, so for example, I'll show you in a second. Isaac, what did you say?
I said besoch.
Yeah, betoch, right. That's what I would think of also, right? Is inside, but then how do you do that as a verb, right? God like gets into the hearts of a person, like he enters into, yeah, it's just either way, it's really, really weird, right? So yeah, so 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's just do blank for a second. Wait, sorry. But Hashem, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hearts. Okay, so let's just go with the different options here. Okay, so the options are regulate, measures. Okay, Ellie said. How would you have translated tikkun, Ellie, when you said it?
I don't even know.
Okay, yeah, fine.
Correct.
Corrects it. Yeah, corrects. Okay. Redeems, I don't know. I wouldn't
redeem something by changing it.
But that's not what the word means, though, right?
To redeem?
Yeah, tikkun does not mean redeem. Yeah, tikkun means to fix, correct.
I guess I think of fixing, correcting as redeeming.
Right. That's just because you're coming from a Kabbalistic perspective, where that's how they use it. Yeah. So Metzius Tion says, so he says milashon tov, like Isaac said, of like inside, but I don't know. I still don't know how to make that into a verb, to verbify it. Sadigon though says, okay, so Sadigon says, Kol darchei ha'adam nirin be'einav yesharim, all the ways of a person appear in his eyes as upright. But Hashem tochen halavavos. Okay, so he doesn't really help us there. But Hashem tochen hearts. But then Targum is where I saw what you're saying, Ali. Is he says ve'elaka mitakin libe. He corrects hearts. Okay, so I'll just delete this here.
Oh, okay, yeah. This is how we talk.
What was it?
Yeah, I definitely would use redeem.
Yeah, right. Okay, Art Scroll says a man's every way is upright in his eyes, but Hashem resides inside his heart. Chas v'shalom. Okay, right. But he's going with the toch thing, right? Of saying that like inside, right? So that I see where Art Scroll is getting it from. But what was that? Ow. Oh, okay, fine. All right. Okay, yeah. Living Nach says every road seems right to a man, but God scrutinizes hearts. Okay, so that's one we didn't have up here. Examines, okay, or scrutinizes. Alter says a man's whole way is right in his eyes, but the Lord takes the measure of hearts. Yeah. Regulates is weird.
I guess I could maybe make a stretch and argue that it's under like philosophical level, but it's like what the other one's doing something.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, these two definitely go. I guess. Well, actually, no. Measures could go either way, right? Measures could be like related to examining, right. Like measuring, or it could be related to like, correcting. Especially if you say mita, like meeting out.
Like balancing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, so those are our translations we're going with for now. Okay, so what are the questions? Yeah.
I'll do the seventh thing by else. We're just reading all the ways of man in his eyes, but Hashem hearts. Without reading the blank, it's like I heart and lie, like Hashem.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't happening to me. Still is not, but I see how you're getting it. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's just delete these so we can make room for the questions. Yeah. So what are the questions here?
He weighs on his.
This is not like a big question.
Yeah.
But is there any significance in the way it conjugates hearts or like presents?
Libos as opposed to like levavos?
Yeah.
Good question. I would think not, but it's one of those things where if you could see an idea, then fine, Yeah, it's too minor for my this might be a poetic thing, but it's always good to ask those questions anyway. Yeah, David and then Mati and then Yaakov.
What are the ways of man?
Okay, what are the ways of man? One possibility. Yeah, Mati.
Says all the ways of man. Does that mean man can't do wrong?
In his eyes.
In his eyes.
His own eyes,
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. Also,
You mean are you saying okay? Meaning when it
it's supposed to be a capital.
No, you're like his as in
his own eyes. Yeah. So meaning, just ask your question again. You're saying when it says
Does that mean a man doesn't think he's ever doing?
okay, yeah, right. So when it says all, right, all the ways of man are straight in his eyes. Does it mean that man thinks he can't do wrong? So I guess the question is like, first of all, I guess just the more primary question, what does it mean by Yashar Be'enav? Right? Like, does it mean that you really think it is not wrong? Does it mean that you think it's going to like lead to a good outcome? You know? Yeah, Ellie. Oh, sorry. Yaakov was first. Yeah, Yaakov.
Well, for instance, so what's the second half and the first half?
Yeah.
You say God's good, it's the case. Was it the effect?
Okay, right. So what is the relationship between the two halves? And then I made a judgment call here. Again, rule in Mishlei is that the vavs in the middle of the pasuk are either and or but. I think here is but for some reason, but you can say that it doesn't have to be that. Also add this here. Is it and or but? Yeah, Ellie?
How did Hashem measure /
Yeah. How does Hashem tochen the heart? Yeah. Also, we have to ask what, I mean, this is kind of the premise of Sean's question. What are hearts in this context?
Does this infringe on the hero?
Okay, yeah. So the last pasuk we did was the one about the king, right? The streams of like streams of water are the heart of a king in the hand of Hashem. Wherever he turns it, he will. Wherever he wants, he will turn it. So because that one talked about hearts and bechira, and this one talks about hearts and bechira, there are people who take these two pesukim together. Okay, so I guess we'll put this as a question. I'm going to kind of combine those into both questions. Because on the surface, I don't think this pasuk seems like it's talking about bechira. I think if you look at it with the last one, then it does. So let's just put this here, which is oh, fine. Okay, so there I accept the question now. Okay, so how does Hashem token the hearts? Does this interfere with bechira? Thank you for supporting a question. Yeah.
So actually on that, is that, I guess that actually kind of helps to make sense of why you might say measure.
Yeah.
Is because maybe it's more like he causes the measurement to.
Wait, are you giving an answer or asking a question?
I'm sort of asking if this could be.
Okay, sure.
To interpret it.
Oh, so you're giving an answer. All right, so let's hold off on answers for now.
Well, I'm just-
Or to how to read it or
Yeah, like,
interpret the idea?
read like the sentence.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Is it like, could you also say it measures as in like causes the measurement to be seen? Like, is it like?
That could be also, yeah. Did we ask what, oh, we did ask what, yeah.
Like reveals the measurement?
Right. Yeah, I suppose that could be a way to read it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It seems like a stupid question, but what does it mean that death is Yachabena?
Yeah. I don't think it's a stupid question. Did we ask even, I guess I'm just going to make this question more precise here. What does it mean that the derech ish is Yashar Beinav? Right. Yeah. So the practical implication here is suggested by the fact that there is some sort of like bad mistake if you think that all your ways are Yashar Beinav, but we still should ask it because what's the practical implication, especially of the second half, or of the way that this is correcting it? Yeah, Sean?
What does it mean by derech ish? Is this like a specific way of man or like?
Yeah, so I noticed that when you translated it originally, you said ways, and I went with that, but it really just says way. And Sadigon agrees with you,
Yeah.
but I'll say like this. Okay, what?
Derech, how do you say all way?
The entire way, I guess. Kol derech. You'd have to put ha'ish, but kol derech ha'ish. What is the derech ish? Is derech singular or plural? Yeah, that's a better way to put it. Okay. I feel like, yeah.
It's like every manner in which, like I guess we use that in English, we use it like manner and it's like grammatically, but it means
Right. Yeah, it is weird though that he uses singular here though. I mean, I don't know. It does read weird. Cool, Derek. Yeah. Okay. I think that's probably all the questions, right? So now let's think of ideas. I mean, of the three translations of Tolkien, is there one that suggests itself to you as being more like in line with the Pshat?
Yeah, now I'm starting to realize that measure actually does make sense.
Oh, interesting.
Examines even.
Yeah.
Because it's starting with the verb of, well, not the verb, but it's starting with the idea of perception in the first place. It's like
Right.
when you
Right.
examine your desires,
Yeah.
it's this way, but then
Right.
that's to Hashem's examination.
Yeah. So I think corrects is the least.
Directly.
I see how it relates to it. In other words, like this. If Tolkien, it depends on how you define the opposite, assuming that the second half is the opposite. If it's talking about perception, so then every man thinks his derech is yashar, but Hashem actually like examines it or sees it clearly, that would be like one way. And measure could fit into that. But if the emphasis is on the yashar, that for man, man's derech is only yashar be'enav, but not in reality. But Hashem is the one who corrects his path or something like that, So I feel like that's where you have to make a judgment call, Yali.
I'm not sure if we're gonna love this idea.
All right.
But it kind of seems to connect to the previous pasuk.
Okay.
In the sense that, I mean, in the previous pasuk, it's talking, I think, about malachim, but
Yeah.
it's the same idea, I think, of having something go one way, or like it seems to be much more like drawn out in the previous pasuk, but I think it's the same idea of acting a certain way and then like Hashem kind of pushes it.
Right. So again, you are in good company. Like a lot of the Mefarshim, take it as connected to the previous one. But then the question would have to be, what do we gain? What more does this pasuk add? Especially since the last one was talking about kings, and this is talking about every person.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's a viable approach.
Oh, maybe that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because it's saying, I don't think this is just unique to that Hashem only corrects certain types of people at a high level. Like he's revealing it to everybody.
Right.
They're right there on his too.
Right. Yeah. I'm wondering if it could go even the other way, that the reason why the king, whatever it was saying about the king is caused by the phenomenon that it's saying about human nature, but it's just more exaggerated in the king. That's kind of the approach we were taking last time, or one of the approaches we were taking last time for the pasuk, that every person has a certain omnipotence fantasy, but for most people, it's evident where the limitations of their power are. Whereas for the king, then he has virtually unlimited power. So this phenomenon of his way being straight in his eyes is going to be totally out of control in the case of the king, Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So then could that be like we say Cole? Because maybe we think that, maybe you think that's only out of control in the case of the king. And we think, oh, but surely a regular person doesn't go that far in their mind. But it's like, no, actually, he completely, even a person Cole being, he goes all that far as well.
Right.
He's that.
Yeah. That could easily be. Yeah. The only reason I don't know if this is why you're saying that I might not like the idea, but of connecting to the previous one. Yeah. Right. So again, I'm fine connecting to the previous one, but I think we should try to look for something just in this one first, and then when we see the Mefarshim, we'll see how they played out. But that would be a good approach, though. Yeah, Sean.
Right. So different approach.
Yeah.
Right. So kind of based off of Mati's question, I don't think it's possible to say that this is talking about every single action that a person does. Right?
That he thinks is correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Rather, I think that we all have our moral frameworks, right? The way in
Yeah.
which we think morality should be, and sometimes we're going to go against that, right? And we'll recognize that that's wrong. But the path that we see as the good, right, is dependent on how we see morality and that framework going, right? But at the end, a lot of times, right? So people can recognize God, right? But because they have their own moral issues internally, so then they will take issue with certain parts of Torah or certain parts of God's morality, right? They don't recognize it, they don't see it within themselves, and so it doesn't look straight to them, and so they try and straighten out the Torah.
Okay.
Versus, right, at the end of the day, the morality of a man is only going to be true if it's aligning with God's.
Okay. So one thing I'm realizing here, which I guess technically speaking is part of question number 2, I think you're making a good distinction, even if you're not making it, still a good distinction between actions and derech.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So, and then that once I saw you were making that distinction, it raises the question in my mind: what's the relationship between action and derech? But then, what's the relationship between derech and heart? Okay. In other words, yeah. So I'm just going to add this here. What is the relationship between derech and action, or I guess in the mushal, if you want to keep it in the mushal derech, between derech and hiluch, derech and walking, So let me just state what I got from your thing and tell me if I'm missing anything. So so it's not saying that you think that everything you do is correct. Everyone has standards of good and bad and values, right? But people think that their derech, their moral system or their moral values are correct, and they measure everything based on that. But then in reality, Hashem, so you're going with measures?
Yeah.
Hashem measures hearts, which means that Hashem's standard is the only one that actually matters. And did you take a stance on what heart is here?
Yeah, so I would say heart is like the full body of like your moral values, and that's only going to be as good as closely as it aligns with God's, right? So he's taking his moral framework and your moral framework and seeing how closely they align, and that's the measurement.
I see.
And depending on like the closer you align, the better your moral system is, and further your
okay, that's good.
Wait, so what's heart? What do you say heart is?
Heart is like the values of man that are being judged in relationship to God's actual moral.
Side comment on that use of heart. So we've said before, we've had pesukim with heart before, and we said that heart usually in all of Tanakh either means your mind or your emotions, but I went through a long period, and I haven't like rejected this entirely, where I translated heart as value, because value is the combo between your mind and your emotions. Like value is ideas of good and bad that affect your feelings and your personality and stuff like that. So I think here it really does fit, God. So God measures values. Okay, so let's just play this through our questions and see if this answers all the questions. So tochen means to measure, which means that there's the standard of objective values that God has, and then there's the subjective values we have. Or if you want to put this, by the way, in terms of Breshis, so there's the like the Rambam's explanation in the Morning Nevuchim 1-2 of the before the Chet, man only related to reality in terms of emes and sheker, objective reality, objective good and bad, and then after the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, people can only relate to the objective reality via their subjective ideas of good and bad. So there's like there's always now a chance of misalignment where you have your subjective ideas of good and bad, and they don't line up with objective reality. Like the classic example, not classic, the easy example is, in the animal kingdom, in the wild, animals don't need to learn what foods are healthy or not. They are, so to speak, programmed to seek out that which they actually need and which is beneficial for them. Human beings, they are different. We have our physiology, which dictates that we need certain things, but then we are attracted based on taste, and the taste might not align at all with what our body actually needs, So we have our subjective values, and then there's objective reality of good and bad, So that's tochen. Okay. What does it mean that it's yashar b'einav? So it does not, and is derech singular plural? What's the relationship between derech and action? So according to you, it's singular, right? Derech is your entire moral value system. And that is the thing that is yashar b'einav. Can we ask why? I mean, I know it's a basic question. Maybe that's what you meant when we said is a stupid question. I don't know, but like, why is it?
Why is it yashar?
I'm trying to be blunt that you think what you're saying is stupid. Yeah. Was it?
Why is it yashar?
Yeah. Why do people think it's yashar? Yeah.
Because I think that's what they use as their metric system to see, like, was my action good? Did it like fit with my morality? Like,
so is it a matter of laziness, of just taking the path of least resistance and assuming that it's good, or is it something more like sinister, deeper, complex in terms of like why they think it's yashar? Yeah.
So I feel like we're bringing heart into it.
Yeah.
But it's trying to let you know that the reason that you even think of any of there that you propose as good is because it's really about serving your pleasures or your own personal needs, desires. And so, and the way you correct that is Hashem has to correct, like, at least revealed to you like that you're doing this for sort of a self-benefiting thing, and it's kind of like sort of the non-existent altruism that like that it's not really there, and so that it's a faulty value system that you have, because it's really about your definition. Defined, your values are defined first by what you want.
Okay. Right. Okay. So hold on just a second. So I think we have two possibilities so far. So first possibility about why people assume it's yashar is because people are lazy. Okay. Meaning that like to actually work out what objectively is good and bad takes both thinking and resistance to well, maybe this is the same thing. I don't know. meaning there's it takes a lot of work to figure out what the objective value system is, but it also takes a lot of going against your own desires. You're emphasizing the desire.
Yeah, but
right.
I'm not saying that that you don't do it because of laziness. You just don't do it because you can even come out of a lot of effort. That you
Sorry.
Hold on to.
I'm translating laziness differently. So I'm going with Sadigon's Mishlei definition of laziness, which is the compulsion to avoid immediate pain.
Okay. Then
Yeah.
Then sure, that's pretty much the next definition. Like
Right. So now that we're bringing in Sadigon, by we I mean me, Sadigon says that all emotions come down to two basic compulsions, which so one is avoiding pain, the other is pursuing pleasure. So I think that the reason why people's derech is yashar be'enav is either in order servicing the avoidance of immediate pain or pursuing immediate pleasure. It's gonna fall into one of those two categories. It could fall into both, yeah.
And he only defines it as immediate.
Well, he says that so his premise is that all people, you can't get out of the pain pleasure motives, but it's only a question of long-term versus short-term. So he says laziness is avoiding short-term pain even at the expense of pleasure. And then taiva, he says, is seeking immediate pleasure at the expense of long-term pain. Okay. And Mishlei's goal is to help you to make decisions based on long-term.
Okay, so suffering through some pain now to get a greater pleasure.
Yeah.
Does that have any emotional basis? Or no?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Okay, and what would Sadia go?
So Sadia would say that that's what Shlomo's trying to get you to do, is to make decisions based on long-term pleasure instead of immediate pleasure. Yeah. And his premise is also that the derech Hashem will lead to the maximum long-term pleasure and avoidance of long-term pain. So works out. Yeah. Okay. So that was Yashar Be'enav. So it's Yashar Be'enav in that you think that your moral framework is correct, and the thing that makes you not want to deviate from that is some form of attachment to immediate pleasure or avoidance of immediate pain. And it could be many things. It could be you enjoy eating pleasurable food. It could be that you don't want to go against the value system that your parents or your society impose upon you. You don't want to, there could be many, many forms of that, but it's going to come down to one of those two things. What's the relationship between the two halves so I think we're definitely saying that the subject of the pasuk is the conflict between your values and Hashem's values, but we haven't really spelled out the Tochen Libos Hashem implications yet. I think that's the question we need to answer.
Yeah, I think I'm part of that, right? I was saying that like a person's measuring their actions by their moral framework.
Yeah.
Right. And similarly, God's measuring their moral framework.
Okay, right. Yeah,
so
yeah.
There's a similarity or like a parallelism.
Yeah.
Between the two.
Yeah, that is good. That's the that is like I don't remember who is in the Rabbi Shnego's discussion group, but the discussion we were having about ultimate values versus subsidiary values, that in any value system, you're going to have a hierarchy of values. So let's say, for example, in this society, people view going to school as a good thing. And if you ask like the average American kid, why should you go to school? They'll say to get a job. And you say, why do you get a job? To make money. Well, why do you get money? And you'll go on and on and on, but you'll eventually get down to what is called ultimate values, which are values that cannot be justified in terms of something else. Like that you can't say it's good because of something else. And the reason why you have to get down to objective values or ultimate values is otherwise it's infinite regression, So there's going to have to be something that at the bottom is what you value. So whether that's pleasure, kavod, power, knowledge, whatever it is, everyone has an ultimate value system. So I think what happens is most people aren't even thinking about what their own ultimate values are. They're just thinking about the immediate. Like a lot of people, if you ask them like why is it good? I don't know, whatever. Like if you ask them these questions, like the why about what they're doing, they'll get to a point where they draw a blank or they just won't have a clear idea, So I feel like that's relevant here in the sense that the Tohin Libos Hashem is going to be on that ultimate value level. Everything's going to extend from that. People are caught up in the immediate classifying of values based on like the local hierarchy, and the pasuk is urging you to make that full investigation and ask yourself, well, ultimately, everything I'm doing that I label as good and bad, what is that in terms of Hashem's ultimate values, and how doesn't measure up? Yeah, right.
Yeah, so
Self-evident, right? Yeah, right. So if you truly hold it self-evident, and to a certain extent, I mean, the choice of what you have, I call it a choice, what you have as your ultimate value is either going to have to be something that is self-evident in some way, like intellectually self-evident, or it's going to have to just be something that that you, well, actually, that's a whole separate question, how you establish that. We'll avoid that for now. Yeah.
So could you be saying that like your ultimate value, which is encompassed by like this Caldera thing, like what it all leads to, that's all really about, is that you think that it's this like really great, like objectively moral thing, and Hashem is revealing actually it's not really, you're not really based off morality, you're just based off of your
Subjective.
pleasure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I feel like the only thing I like this idea a lot. The only thing we're missing, I think, is I feel like there's a Mishlaic rhetorical punch that I feel like the pasuk is delivering that I feel like I'm not quite getting. You know, like you could, in other words, like the whole derech of Mishlei again is the ideas are typically very simple and not deep, but the power of the book is in the impact it has on your emotions. So I feel like if you just state this idea like intellectually, you know, so there is an objective value system and there's your subjective desires, and you have to align the two. But what is this at like how are we supposed to take this and like make it real to ourselves? You know, kol derech yashar b'einav. Because I feel yeah. Like,
I mean, is there like a correlation between that, like the simplicity of the pasuk and how hard it hits?
Sometimes there is, yeah. That's sometimes the punch is from the simplicity of it, you know.
Or the complexity of it.
Oh, so typically, here's what this is just in my experience, is the complexity is not really what delivers the punch. It could be the particularity, like because particulars and concretes hit your emotions, you know. So if you do see a pasuk that is very complex, it's not going to be the complexity that hits you. If anything, that's going to make it less powerful. It's going to be the particulars that like for example, like we brought up the other day early in Mishlei, when the Mishalim are more elaborate, it says, go to the ant, you lazy person, learn from its ways and grow wise. Even though it doesn't have any chiefs, officers, or managers above it, then she prepares her food in the summer and like you know, stores her food you know, while there's still food or whatever, you know. So it's going into depth. It's not the complexity that gets you, it's the fact that it's drawing this detailed picture of an ant and saying like, this ant is better than you, you know. So
maybe it's like the complexity that's like could be like understood in a very particular way.
Yeah, reducing the complexity to direct terms would be another rhetorical punch. That's a good way to say it. Yeah. Mati, did you have your hand up? Yeah.
So maybe Hashem
Token Libos, yeah.
right. So it's not that God straightens or corrects anything, it's that God's already provided a framework for like an objective, like correct thing to do.
Right.
So maybe Hashem corrects or Hashem examines is just a reminder, but when it's already there.
Yeah, so that's a good interpretation. I actually didn't ask that to you, Sean, about where do we get or through what means does Hashem Tofein Libos. So there's really two possibilities, right? There's Torah. That's one way that Hashem does this. And what else is there?
I think
Well, scarf ownership, you're really going to, oh, you mean when Hashem actually delivers scarf ownership, right? Yeah, I feel like the scarf ownership does not work unless you already have Hashem's objective values.
what is it? What's the word?
What he's saying, scarf ownership, reward and punishment.
Oh right, so as in like pain and like
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say that actually I feel like that's where the emotional impact comes from, is that you can relate to this inherently, like you can just see for your own self that even when you try to use your strategies that are supposedly for pleasure, for good, they end up not being so. So that is like
Yeah, so it's fun.
mechanism.
What's funny about that is, and I'm not rejecting that interpretation based on what I'm about to say. I mean, I am, but I'm not. I'm not delegitimizing it based on what I'm about to say. Is we did a pasuk. I think Isaac. I think we did this earlier last year. kol derech ish yashar beinav v'acharisa darche maves, or something like that. I don't know, maybe we didn't do it last year. Maybe all the ways of a person are straight in his eyes, and at the ends are ways of death. So to me, that emphasizes that there are going to be painful consequences to giving into this view of like, it's that pasuk is predicated on the same phenomenon of like viewing your derech as straight, but that one's emphasizing that you're going to meet a bad end if you follow that. This to me seems to be more like in line with what Mati was saying, of like, you have to look to Hashem's, values in order to correct yours. And I think that's either going to be through the Torah or through just applying your intellect to the world. The reason why I'm not saying Skarva Onesh is because you see this all the time, that people get suffer a pain, but then how they interpret it is based on their derech. You could have a totally messed up derech and then take the wrong message from it. So you need to like go to the source, and the source is going to be either Torah or like what you can get from your own mind. Yeah.
I've had shut on this.
For a different approach.
Yeah.
Let's just. I think we're almost wrapped this up. Yeah.
Yeah, can I give a punch for the?
Sure. Yeah.
I would say like a person sees this as the good.
Yeah.
Right. So the thing that you like internalize as the good is something that you now have to reject in order to like get to the actual good. Like that's
Yeah.
a very difficult thing for a person.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was thinking the punch comes from the same way, the same part, that the punch comes from kol derech ish yashar beinav, and I think the natural emotional reaction is, yeah, but not me. Like, like I think I'm right because I actually am right. And what this is trying to inject into every person is this Mishlei values skepticism, where you are constantly questioning, like, is my feeling that I'm right, is that just a feeling, and I have to constantly be checking back to trying to understand the value system of Hashem, which again, ultimately, you can only see things through your own perspective. So the most you can do is just check and be skeptical and question yourself and like constantly reevaluate, Yeah, I think the punch comes more from the first half than the second half, Yeah. Yeah, Yaakov. All right, clean the slate, shake the Etch-a-Sketch, new approach. Okay, remake the Etch-a-Sketch. Yeah.
You're saying the person evaluates their own conduct.
Yeah.
The tendency to have a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
Their conduct is correct.
Yeah.
But you look at what God does, so to speak, in Mishlei, not in martial terms, God has to scrutinize them.
Oh, that's good.
Not to imply that God doesn't know.
No, right, but that's the muscle though. Yeah.
The muscle is that God has to scrutinize our figure out, how proper.
That's really good. Okay, so that's a really good idea. That might even be a full idea. So just to say it again, so it's talking. So the subject, according to Sean, the subject is value systems. According to you, the subject is really rationalization. Of like looking to justify your own actions.
Yeah.
And people, I'm going to say this in a way that this is going to sound like I'm quoting something, but I don't think I am. People are very good at being melamed zuchus on themselves, right? But not on other people. And we do it instinctively. Like we don't have to like dig deep in order to be melamed, to judge ourselves favorably, to rationalize our behavior. And then it's contrasting that with v'tochein libos Hashem. Hashem investigates and scrutinizes. We have to see where our scroll got that term scrutinizes from, but let's assume that that's a correct translation. He scrutinizes, which means that you shouldn't just rely on, if you find yourself just almost instantaneously justifying your actions, that's not likely to be correct. That's not how Hashem operates. I saw that also with the, I think we saw that in a Mishlei pasuk. Someone said it was one of the king judgment pesukim, that a king shouldn't rely on estimations, on umdanas. Does that sound familiar? No. Yeah, I think we did that. And then hold on just a second here. Where's my? Oh yeah.
Described as like Moshe, like being humble enough that even when like people in Korah, when they approached him, like they claimed that he was doing this wrong, instead of being like, "What are you talking about, Moshe?" Like he'd like be like, "Oh wait, maybe they're right. Like maybe I should be the one in charge." And a lot of self like taking consider it, not just assuming it was part of it. You're saying it's like comparing the two approaches, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on just one second. I think it was the Meiri. Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say Migdal Bavel, but it was probably the same thing. But you're at Hashem, right? As God went down to see, right? Meaning that's to teach Dayanim that they shouldn't just make assumptions, but that they should investigate the facts and then make a conclusion based on that. Yeah. Hold on. This is gonna bother me if I don't look at it now. I think the Meiri on the pasuk about the belly, Kadre Batan, I think said. What was the Kadre Batan thing? No. Oh, here we go. Malchus Kadre Batan. Oh, yeah, Sarah. Maybe it wasn't. Okay, I saw this somewhere. We definitely read this somewhere. Yeah. Yeah, David.
There's also a note on what Yaakov was saying about rationalizing things. I think we do it both before we do an action and after we do actions.
Yeah.
In both directions.
Right.
And
It justifies, like it gives us reason. We need to be mati ourselves to do it,
yeah, to be motivated.
and then to counteract the guilt and the shame, or whatever. Yeah.
I haven't thought about like putting that.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Yeah. All right. So let's look at some Mefarshim. I assume the Mefarshim are going to be along one of these two lines at least. Okay. So let's go quickly to Metzudas David, as we usually do. Metzudas David says, Yashar Einav ki ino roa chova la'atmo. No person sees their own liability, right? They can't be objective about themselves. V'tochein libo Hashem hu b'soch libo v'yodea hu im yashar dacho im lao. Yeah, that's where our scroll guide is translation from. Hashem is inside the heart. Again, if you, that has to mean that Hashem can like have knowledge of the heart, because Hashem is not inside the heart. And he knows if your path is straight or not. So it's interesting if you're going to take that approach. Then it's interesting that usually we use the mashal when we talk about Hashem having absolute knowledge. We use the mashal of Hashem seeing things from outside. That like there's a pasuk in Yeshayahu that people go into the depths of darkness and say, "Who can see us here?" And really, it says Hashem can see. So we talk about Hashem, or we talk about the Eini Hashem is on everything. Hashem's eyes are on everything. This is saying that Hashem has the inner perspective from within your heart. So I'm just wondering if that, what do you get from that mashal that you don't get from the? In other words, I think
that's like the Psalms, like the example you gave about having to go into the city, like peace inside the city.
Yeah, right. But I think there is a different feeling that I think people do feel like their hearts and their thoughts are like closed off, and like that only they know them. So if you use the mashal of like a spotlight, shining on something. So that will help you in terms of if you're trying to, let's say, like do an avera in secret, saying that God watches you, or let's say like, you should know 3 things and you won't come to sin, that everything, there's a watching eye, a hearing ear, and all your deeds are recorded in a book. That mashal is going to suffice for doing averos in secret, but harboring like thoughts or feelings in your heart, you need another mashal for, which is Hashem sees inside your heart. You can't use like the mashal of like shining a light on it. Yeah.
Actually, so I feel like psychologically, I would be less thinking about you thinking you're hiding your feelings from like Hashem or anyone else, and more. And this is why you can rationalize from even yourself. You can like kind of hide your true intentions.
Yeah.
In a kind of this obscure realm.
Right.
And so Hashem like causes you to like confront what you really are doing.
Yeah.
And that's what it's.
Yeah. So that would be another thing, right? Which is along those lines, but then that would be taking Tochen Libos Hashem as kind of like you were inclined to say earlier, like he makes it manifest.
Yeah.
And I think Rubinu Yona is going to take that approach if I remember correctly. But yeah, we'll see that in a second. Yeah, Mati? No? Okay.
Yeah, I did have it.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Maybe it's like you think that God is like a step behind you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have your own thoughts, and then God like knows about it. God's like sees it all the time. He knows the rest.
Right. Meaning like, I think that when we talk about knowing our thoughts, I think we naturally default into how people know our thoughts, which is through observation or inference, which is one step removed, and that's not how it works with God, is that that God knows our thoughts immediately, which by the way, I just got to translate the Nimshal, right? What does it mean that God knows our thoughts, right? So what it means, I think just to put this in, this is the challenge of anytime you use a mashal about God, You have to decode the mashal to the point where it's going to have the maximum developmental impact. Because it's all mashal. God doesn't have knowledge the way that a human has knowledge. So even when we talk about God knowing without observation, it doesn't mean that. So the best way that I think the time I had this realization of what we mean when we say God's knowledge or God's thoughts is there's a statement from Einstein where he's talking about like his involvement in physics, and he says, look, all I want to know are God's thoughts. So God's thoughts equal reality, right? God's thoughts is a mashal for reality, because that is, like we say that in his Mishlei Shabbos, or Mishlei Shabbos. Right? God's thoughts are deep, which in the context of the parak, the Radak says means that the wisdom manifest in the universe is very deep. So to say that God knows our thoughts, I'd say means your thoughts have a reality, have an objective reality. Meaning there's this tendency to realize, okay, my actions have a reality. If I do something, it can have consequences. But my thoughts and feelings, like they're in their own realm that's like disconnected from all of reality. But no. They are, God knows them means that they register on reality. So you can't think to yourself, oh, I'm just going to have these thoughts or have these feelings that aren't going to manifest or have any impact on anything. And that's saying, no, it is real. Your thoughts are real. Yeah. Okay, let's read Revinu Yona, because I think it's like what Chizkiah was saying, but we'll see. Midos, so it actually starts on the next page. Midos ha'adam, left column. Midos ha'adam v'tivo yesharim be'einav. So the behavior or traits of a person in his nature are upright in his eyes. V'lo yakir b'selef inyanim v'ivusan. So that's starting off like Yaakov. And a person doesn't recognize the corruptedness of their content or their distortions. Al-kain kashem oda davar sheyisakin ha'adam tivo tivav umidosav. Therefore, it's very difficult for a person to correct his nature and his midos. V'tochin libus Hashem, amnam Hashem Yis'aleh ozer ha'adam. But Hashem helps a person. Umasakin midos libo umiyasher toldosav umeir es rucho lahargish bechesrona uvaselef midosav. But God corrects a person's heart and straightens his nature. That Rubin uses the word toletus as nature, and enlightens his spirit or awakens his spirit to sense his own deficiencies and the corruption of his midos. Kasher yichun ha'adam es libo lidrosh ha'emes v'lalechas achar Hashem. When he prepares a person's heart to seek the truth and to follow after Hashem. Hashem yira leleva, because Hashem sees the heart. It says in Divrei Hayamim, Hashem seeks all hearts and understands the inclination of all thoughts. Tavas anavim shimas Hashem. The desire of the humble is obedience to Hashem. V'amru zal balatayim masayin also. And Chazal say one who comes to purify himself is assisted. The tochen lashon tikun. Tochen means to fix. Okay, fine. Oh, he goes when Eli move. This is connected to the previous pasuk. Even though Hashem gives human beings free will, as it says, behold, I have placed before you today the life and the good. Therefore, God inclines the heart of the king to wherever he desires. Therefore, God, or similarly, God changes natures and evil natures and corrects hearts. When a person prepares his heart to follow after Hashem and to serve him. So not exactly like what Chizkiah was saying, not that refutes it, but this is actually very much like this morning's episode of the Stoic Jew podcast.
So this completely makes to me this the strongest one by far.
Yeah.
I don't really remember what I said actually.
Okay.
Although I kind of do, but I think this is kind of where I got this from.
Yeah. So say what makes sense about it, and then we'll end.
Well, could you define that one line again? Translate the Taher.
Yeah, one who comes to be purified will be assisted.
Right. Okay. Right. So, okay. Fine. So, in other words, exactly right. So, like sometimes we need help discerning our own even our own thoughts.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, right? Like we have this way of we don't even know how the way we think and the methods we use make it so that it's really hard to correct ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think this was also kind of encouraging in the emotional impact here is that it's Hashem helps you.
Mhm.
It's not. It's
Right.
Not, it's not like it's not a reward and punishment like in the negative sense that we think of. Like it's like I'm just it's my consequences of my horrible actions.
Right.
It's like everything that he's doing is to help you reveal it to you.
Right.
Because you have a tendency to like not see it.
Yeah, and I think that actually is the shot of this, which is that the more in line with it, and this might even connect to what Sean's saying, even though it's interpreting the pasuk differently. The more you are in Hashem's value system, the more you will take what happens to you as Musar Hashem, as Tochah from Hashem, to correct yourself and further align yourself with the proper derech. Yeah. All right, good. Let us stop here for today, and then PSA for tomorrow. What was it?
You want to try to do 1 minute reviews more?
Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah, so Sean's approach, thanks for reminding me. Sean's approach had to do with aligning your value system with Hashem's. And the punch is, yeah, everyone else thinks that they're actually correct, but I'm the one who actually is correct. And this is saying no. Yaakov's was about rationalizing your own behavior before or after the sin, and saying that no, even Hashem has to investigate, which means that you should at least do what Hashem does, so to speak. And then we have this Chizkiyahu, Rבינו Yona hybrid approach of like Hashem actually correcting you from the outside, but that only comes if you're actually aligning yourself with his values. All right, thank you. Yep, see you tomorrow. Yeah, PSA.